Regularly updating WordPress will keep your site secure and healthy. Today, I'm going to show you how to update WordPress and how WordPress updates actually work. So hi everyone, and welcome to the WP Quickies series, bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. Hi, I'm Will Brown, WordPress consultant and educator. I help WordPress designers and developers get more clients and grow their WordPress business. Just a few housekeeping things before we start. Join us on our Facebook group, which is WordPress Sydney Meetup. You can search that on Facebook. You can also visit wpaustralia.org, and that tells you all the WordPress meetups that are happening across Australia. And there's also a link to join our Slack group. If you are a web developer, designer who creates and maintains client websites, I have the ultimate website owner survival guide for you. It's going to help you to add some money to your bottom line. So go and check out wasg.com.au if that's you. I have rescheduled the WordPress Sydney meetup. I couldn't do that, unfortunately. I'm a little bit unwell at the moment. I've got a bit of a cold. So I cancelled the compliance and WooCommerce meetup, but I have rescheduled it for an online meetup only. So if you're looking to learn a little bit more about compliance in regards to WooCommerce and just kind of websites in general, you can join me on September the 5th at 6:30 p.m. So it's an online only event. That one you can have a look at the meetup.com website. And at the end of this month, because it's September, welcome to spring in Australia. The next monthly in-person WordPress meetup is going to be at the end of this month, September the 26th. And I'm going to be talking about building quizzes in WordPress. Now, if you haven't dabbled in quizzes, it's a really good digital marketing trick to get information out of your target audience, your ideal client avatar. So being able to build quizzes and be able to target people and get some information about them is a really, really good thing to do. So join me on September the 26th at 6 p.m. at the Microsoft Reactor right next to Windows Station. And we'll be talking about quizzes, and there might even be a little bit of pizza to munch on. So please let me know who you are and who you're from in the comments below while we're doing all this introduction. Please fill out some suggestions as well. I'm always looking for topics to talk about in the WP Quickies. This thing is about you. It's all for you guys. So please send me some topics. I can talk about roughly about 20 minutes, maybe a few minutes afterwards for some Q&A. That would be fantastic. I'll send a link down to the comments, and there's always a link underneath the video descriptions as well. Okay, I am going to jump straight in because I've got quite a few screens to show you today. Okay, you have to excuse me, I'm a bit croaky from the cold. Okay, so WordPress updates. WordPress allows administrators to perform updates within the dashboard. The process is fast, it's reliable, and it's generally a background task you don't have to require too much knowledge or too much technical knowledge to be able to do. So here we are. WordPress updates. I'll just get rid of myself down the bottom there. WordPress is going to notify administrators when updates are ready to be installed in multiple locations across the dashboard. So we have notifications up at the top in the admin dashboard. That's the horizontal strip right across the top. You can see those two twisty arrows going to that, and there's the number 6. That tells you there's 6 updates that are available across the WordPress installation. And then on the dashboard navigation bar on the left-hand side, we've got the updates, and again, it's got the number 6. And if that wasn't enough, we've now got also a nag or a notification bar right at the top of our dashboard to tell us about WordPress. So the WordPress Core is available to update now. So WordPress will notify the admins on multiple areas as to what needs to be updated or how many updates that are available to install. Okay, so there are 4 WordPress components that can be updated using this automatic background updating process. The first one is the WordPress Core, and here I'm in the dashboard in the updates section here. And it just tells me that the current version is 6.0.1 and that the version of the WordPress Core 6.0.2 is available to be installed if we'd like to do that. So that panel there, that's in your dashboard and then updates. Really, really easy to install WordPress. To upgrade it. It's not so easy to roll it back. There are a few plugins that you can roll back WordPress, or you can do it manually using FTP or cPanel or place the file manager in there. It's just basically copy the zip file and unzip it in the root directory. But we're talking about progressive updates here, moving forward. So this is the WordPress Core update, really, really easy to do. Come to the screen, click on that one button, and it just does it all for you. The next component of WordPress is plugins. Plugins, here they are, the same page. Scroll down a little bit, and you can see here, these are the plugin updates that you can apply. You can apply them one by one, or you can select all and apply them with one click. So it's really, really easy, super easy to update plugins within WordPress. And the same is true for themes and translations. So the two other core components that you can update with WordPress. Now, I've not got any updates here for themes and not got any updates for translations, but I usually do have some in translations because I run the WordPress Australian language. So there's usually a translation update whenever there's a new core update for that. So those are the four components. You got your WordPress core, you got plugins, you got themes and translations, and you'll find updates from time to time available to install from those. One-click install within the dashboard. So really, really easy to update and keep WordPress nice and updated. So how does the actual WordPress update work itself? Well, the WordPress update process is relatively easy and it happens in the background without any user intervention, other than you having to select plugins and click on the update button itself. Now, when the WordPress core, when plugins, when themes, or even translations are updated, there's an associated zip file that's downloaded from the WordPress.org repository. Now, WordPress.org, it has the repository for the WordPress core files. It has a repository for most of the plugins that people use, for most of the themes that people use as well. The translations, that's kind of kept with the WordPress core. It's within that zip file as well. So when you are updating, or when WordPress is updating itself, it sends a request to WordPress.org and says, give me those files. And it basically downloads the zip file. Now it's going to download that zip file in one of your folders in your WordPress installation. So that's the wp-content/upgrade folder. It'll download the zip there, and it'll basically unzip that folder to the appropriate location. So that's in the root folder for WordPress core and translation. It's going to be in wp-content/plugins for plugins, wp-content/themes for themes. And WordPress will unarchive, unzip that zip file to that location automatically in the background. And the process will just loop through whatever plugins you have selected, plugins and themes, just until everything is finished. So it's a relatively easy process that happens in the background. Sometimes things do go wrong. It's usually a file permission error. So when WordPress downloads a zip file for a plugin, for example, if the plugin folder hasn't got the proper permissions, when it comes to unzip it, it can't delete it, it can't overwrite, it kind of leaves it in a little bit of limbo. Sometimes that happens, and that's usually 99.9% of the time a file permission error, which can easily be resolved using FTP, cPanel, using File Manager. But for the most part, WordPress updates itself nicely and automatically in the background without any intervention. Okay, so because WordPress updates process involves unpacking files and to overwrite existing files, that can kind of cause some PHP errors in WordPress if you were allowed to run WordPress simultaneously with the update. So you could get a chance that you're leaving some plugin files a little bit in limbo. Maybe it's expecting a file that's there, or maybe it's expecting a function within a file that hasn't been copied over yet. And that could result in PHP errors and white screen of death, or even worse for your website. So to solve this issue, WordPress is locked or put in maintenance mode when it's being updated. What this means is a small file called .maintenance is created in the WordPress root directory. So that's the same directory where your wp-config.php is. And the file, it contains a simple timestamp, and that's when the update process started. Now, when a visitor tries to open a WordPress, either in the front end, so it could be a public visitor, or the back end, you could be an editor or an admin, during this maintenance mode period, then you're going to get this message up here, briefly unavailable for scheduled maintenance. Check back in a minute. So what WordPress should do is once the update process is finished, it should automatically remove that .maintenance file. If it doesn't, it actually looks at the timestamp there. And if it's within a few minutes, I think it's about 4 or 5 minutes of that timestamp being valid. If it's over that, then it'll just ignore that maintenance mode file and it'll let you back into WordPress. So unlock the website so public people can view the front website and you as administrator or editor can get back into the dashboard. So that's part of the process of the update, is this maintenance mode. And the message there can be configured. There's some plugins out there that you can pretty up this screen and make it, brand it for your own brand and put your own wording in there. You don't have to keep the default one. There are plugins out there to change that. But that's the process. Updates, copies over zip files, puts the WordPress site in a maintenance mode, locks basically, completes the update process, and then unlocks the website so you can use it again. Okay, so how does WordPress know if there's any updates available? Well, WordPress has a built-in scheduler, and it's called the WP cron, or some people just call it cron, which checks component versions, so it's checking the core, the plugin, and the themes versions twice a day. So it's on a schedule. It checks with wp.org in the relevant positions, in the relevant repositories that it needs to. So it pulls out the WordPress.org repository twice a day and just checks to see if the list of your plugins, list of your themes, and list of core have the same version, essentially. WordPress adds a notification message to the dashboard. We've seen that in one of the first slides. When any updates are found, so any mismatch in version numbers, and then it's going to start adding those lists of new versions to the plugin updates, to the theme updates, and to your core updates in the dashboard area. So that's how WordPress checks twice a day for updates. Okay, now we get onto a little bit of a more techie slide here. Sorry for the all the techie stuff, but I think it's good to understand how these version numbering works. So I talked about how WordPress polls the WordPress.org repositories twice a day to check to see if plugin, theme, and core version numbers are different. So if you are trying to develop a theme or developing a plugin, version numbering is something you probably should be looking into and you need to understand. Now, there are 3 types of WordPress releases before we get to version numbers. So those 3 releases are core development. So that's basically just for development. So if you're developing on core, if you're working to update WordPress itself, if you're a core contributor, if you're looking to do theme translations, that sort of stuff, that's a particular type of release. It's just like a developer, core development release. Then there is a major core update, which has got lots of big changes in it, and then there's a major core update as well. So 3 types of WordPress releases: core development just for development, and then minor core updates and major core updates. Now, unfortunately, let's get rid of myself there. Unfortunately, WordPress core version numbering does not follow the semantic versioning. Now, if I lose you here, that's okay. I've got a link down there to semver.org. So this is more developer type thing. When you're developing software, most software standards in software development use the versioning, semantic versioning on the left-hand side. And that's where the format is, version x.y.z, where x equals a major update, which can mean breaking changes, like major update. Y is a minor update, which means just kind of addition to features. And then the patch is Z. Z is the patch, which is bug fixes, hot fixes, security fixes, and things like that. Now, in the software development world, semantic version is pretty standard, and that's what we would adhere to. However, WordPress core version numbers is slightly different. So I've got a link at the very bottom of the screen there. So make.wordpress, and we've got the core handbook, and it tells you about the release cycle and version numbering. So WordPress version is a little bit different. So it follows the format x.x.y. So we're basically dropping that patch all the way down. And the reason they drop this patch is that the project leaders, the core contributors, say that patches are not required to be released because the development cycle of WordPress is so quick. Whether or not you agree with that or not, that's their pitch and that's what they're saying. So we have this format where we've got a major release, which is the first 2 x's. So x.x, that's the major release, and that's basically all the changes in WordPress core. And then we've got minor updates, which is bug fixes, hot fixes, and stuff like that, which is rolled into this kind of minor, what they call a minor one, which is really kind of a patch in the semantic version. So, for example, WordPress version 4.0 is just the next incremental version from WordPress 3.9. And so 4.0 doesn't mean it's a huge, big, major breaking change. It could just have a few things. 3.9 could have had a lot more changes than 4.0. So there's no major WordPress 3 or WordPress 4 or WordPress 5 or 6 versions. They all just come up, 3.1, 3.2, and it goes up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then it goes back to the next ones, which will be 4.0, 4.1. It just keeps going like that. So there's two first version numbers. X.x, that's the major WordPress release. And then anything else, all the smaller ones are minor ones, all the dot ones are minor ones. So if you're confused, yeah, so are a lot of other developers and me. WordPress version is a bit pants, in my humble opinion, and we could really do with moving to semantic version to bring it in line with the rest of the industry. But that's a conversation for another day. So that's WordPress versioning. Let's move on a little bit. So WordPress automatic updates. So we've seen how you can go into the WordPress dashboard, you can select things, and you can click on updates for all plugins or single themes for those. But WordPress introduced automatic updates in the WordPress core in version 3.7 quite a few years ago. And by default, WordPress core updates are only enabled for minor releases. And that's why I spent a little bit of time on the previous slide telling you exactly what major and minor versioning is in WordPress. So if you have, by default, the minor version is turned on. So if you have, for example, installed at the moment 6.0.1, there is a security patch out 6.0.2, and unless you have tinkered around with automatic updates, unless your host has changed that, then WordPress should automatically update you to 6.0.2. However, it will not update you automatically unless you change the settings to 6.1, because that is a major update rather than a minor update. So in recent WordPress versions, administrators can now control automatic updates for plugins and themes as well as the core. And we can see here, this is one of the latest updates. I'll just get rid of myself, sorry. So WordPress allows you to switch automatic updates for plugins now directly from the dashboard view. And this is a relatively new feature. So it was enabled in 3.7 for the WordPress core, but now it's been rolled out to plugins and themes. So when you visit your plugins area in the dashboard, you will see on the very right-hand side, now you've got a button or a link to enable auto updates and disable auto updates on a per plugin level. And the same is true for themes, only slightly different. So here we can see this is in the theme options. So once you click on the theme options, then there's a link there to enable auto updates for that. So going back to the plugins, you can see the list at the top. So as well as having the links to disable and enable, at the very top in one of the little mini menus, you can see you can now click on a link to show all auto update enabled plugins and all auto update disabled plugins. So you can kind of tell which ones are going to update automatically, which ones are not. And that's really beneficial if you've got a more complex website. And I'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of the presentation. Okay, so that's the themes. Now, you get into a little bit more techie stuff here. Sorry about that, but it's controlling updates. You can control how the WordPress updates its core, how it updates the themes, and how it updates the plugins with granular control. And one of the ways of doing that is using constants or defined constants in the wp-config.php file, and that's your main WordPress configuration file. Now here I've got some on the screen. WordPress provides a couple of configuration file constants to change the automatic update behavior of the core itself. So the first one here is automatic underscore updater underscore disabled. So setting this constant to true will disable any type of automatic updates, not just core, but also theme and plugins as well. So that's going to just disable the whole automatic updates. And you might want to do that if you've got maybe a more complex type of website running up, so you don't really want things to change. You want to be able to do that yourself. So that's one way of disabling automatic update across the entire website. Now, the line you add here is the second one underneath, so the one in black. That's the line you'd add to your wp-config.php file. Now, there's another one, the configuration constant automatic updater. Oh, I think so that should be automatic update core. Sorry, I'll change that one in the slide to so this one here. I'll copy it in the comments. There's another constant. It's this one. WP underscore auto underscore update underscore core. This one allows you to control the core updates between minor, major, and development releases. So those are the three lines that you can put in your WP config. So you can disable all just core updates, or you can enable major and minor by setting that to true, or you can just enable minor updates by setting that constant to minor. So those are the three values that it accepts, and the minor one is the default, but you can force it by putting it to true to update WordPress core for the major and minor ones as well. You can also do this using the API functions. So WordPress provides API filters and functions to give granular control over how automatic backgrounds work if you're a developer or a theme designer. The first filter here is automatic update to disabled. And it basically does the same thing as the constant, the very first constant I showed in the last slide. And it just disables all automatic updates across the website. So you can do this programmatically if you're a developer, a plugin developer, or a theme designer. Now, the other one here, if you need to control how WordPress updates the components, that's your core, plugin, themes, and translations independently, then you have access to this filter called auto_update_dog type, where type just means core, plugin, theme, or translation. And you can see those lines in the box, the last black box there. So there's 4 filters there, and what they're doing is they're auto-update core, they're telling core to update, they're telling the plugins to update, the theme to update, and the translation to update. But we could return false there if, for example, we didn't want any plugins to update, but we wanted themes and core to update. So you've got granular control if you're a developer as to how WordPress uses these automatic updates. Okay, so WordPress can notify or does notify admins by email depending on the result of the updates. So there's 3 results notification emails that happens after a WordPress automatic update. The first one is a result email, and that is after an automatic core update. The second one is a notification email, and that runs if your update has not run. So the automatic update was scheduled, and for whatever reason, it didn't run. And then we've got a debugging email. And this one's only sent on development versions of WordPress. It just contains more information about why that automatic update did not run. But essentially, we're looking at the first one. So the automatic update has run. It's updated core, it's updated the plugin, it's updated the WordPress core. You will get an email as an administrator with these 3 subjects, depending on what happened. So the first one will be your site has been updated to WordPress and it's got the version number. So that you'll get that email if that resulted in a successful update. The next one you will get if WordPress detects there's a new version available we haven't updated yet. So it's WordPress, it's got the version number is available, please update. And the last one is if the update failed. So if you're updating WordPress core automatically, if it failed to update it for some reason, you'll get this last email that says urgent, your site may be down due to a failed update. So it is useful to get these email notifications if you're an administrator, especially the last one. You don't want to leave your website hanging with not working for your visitors. But if you want to disable those emails, if you don't like these emails, if you want to send them somewhere else or whatever, then there's a filter that you can apply, and that's one at the bottom. So it's auto core update send email. You can turn them off just by adding that line in the black box, and that will just get rid of those update emails, or you can filter out the content and possibly send those to some other person. Okay, so how to disable? So when to disable WordPress automatic updates. So having your entire WordPress website update itself can sound very appealing at first, and it may be possible for maybe a small blog or a brochure website. However, as every WordPress site owner knows, sometimes plugins and themes don't kind of play nicely together, especially with WordPress core updates, and that can cause outages and problems and downtime for your website. Now, if your website setup is complex with multiple big plugins or lots of plugins that do lots of things like WooCommerce, maybe Elementor, BuddyPress, LearnDash, that sort of level of big plugins, and you just cannot suffer, maybe you just can't suffer being out, having an outage, your business being offline, then you may choose to disable automatic updates across the entire site, and then just manually update those using a staging server, testing stuff, and then applying that on live. And a lot of people do that. I do that myself. I disable automatic updates for the majority of my client websites because they've got more complex websites. I do run a few brochure websites that I've just got everything turned on, and I don't really have any problem with those sites. But things like WooCommerce and Elementor and these kind of big systems, I want to make sure that WordPress is not automatically updating those to a major version, because that could cause some major outages in my clients' websites. But you can also have a mix as well. You don't have to switch everything on or turn everything off. And you can have a mix of enabling automatic updates for maybe small single-use plugins, and maybe disabling automatic updates for the heavier, extensive plugins like WooCommerce and LearnDash, for example. So if you've just got a few little plugins that do tiny little things in the admin dashboard on the front end, they should be fine to update because they only do one thing, they're hardly going to go wrong. but you can imagine something like WooCommerce, if they release a big major version, then that could be a big disaster if other websites, other plugins and themes aren't compatible. So you can run with a mix. For those, I do that in my own personal websites. I've got a mix of things that auto-update and some things I'm like, no, don't touch that, please. I'll handle that myself. But the fact that you have this granular control over WordPress as an admin and as a developer, I think is excellent for the tool. Okay, almost there. Updating premium WordPress themes and plugins. So I've been talking about the WordPress Core, the WordPress plugins and themes are kept on the WordPress.org repository. And that's all built into Core, and it pings them and it knows what's the version number, and that's fine. But what happens if you decide to develop your own premium or pro plugin or theme? Well, the good news is that as WordPress provides API actions and filters for the automatic update process, developers can hook into this functionality and run their own private repository for their own premium themes and plugins. So you don't have to rely on the WordPress.org repository. If you want to keep your paid premium plugin or theme separate, if you want to be able to pay for it before it gets updated, keep that repository private. That's okay, you can do that. So if you'd like to start doing that, there's a fantastic article that I found, and the link is down below. It's Rudstray, I think is the pronunciation, and they talk about how you can create a self-hosted plugin repository and then get the plugins, get the themes to update using the WordPress auto-update process. So it's really good read. It's something if you're a plugin developer or a theme developer, and it's something you might want to think about doing, it's probably a great place to start is looking at that blog post up there. Now, I will post all the updates, all the links to this in the meetup page, in the Facebook, the YouTube, all the places. I'll post all these links so you'll be able to get those later on today or tomorrow. Okay, that's it. So automatic updates in WordPress is a fantastic feature. I love it. For end users to have and for developers to have fine control over how WordPress is updated. However, as I noted, if you run many plugins or complex plugins, excuse me, like WooCommerce, you might have to think twice about allowing those major updates to run automatically without doing any sort of manual testing in between. So there you go, that's it, that's the talk for today. If you've got any questions, people, please drop them down in the comments below. I know some of it delved into a little bit more complex, some of it was a little bit more beginnery at the start. So a little bit of a mix for everyone. I try to cover all bases for those. If you've got any questions, you can pop them in the comments right now. Otherwise, please do connect with me. Have a look at my new website, willbrown.com. I'm pumping up some more content for that. I'm scheduling all up for the next few months. So there will be more stuff coming out on there. Otherwise, you can contact me on LinkedIn, WillBrownEU, and on Instagram and on Twitter. I've got a question from Jean. So she can get a drink. A great question. In which order do you run updates? WP Core, then plugins, then themes. Yes, that's the exact process that I do. So WP Core would be first. You want to make sure the core is running, because that's all your plugin authors, all your theme authors should be updating their plugins towards the current theme. As a plugin and theme developer, you actually get an email notification when a new WordPress version, a major version is around about beta 1 or beta 2. So you get the opportunity to download that, test your themes, test your plugins, to make sure that when the actual release is released, that your plugins and themes are compatible with those. So yes, always do WordPress Core first, make sure that's working. And then I do my plugins to make sure that they are then compatible with the WordPress Core. And then themes. Generally, I tend to find that themes can be a little bit slower in the take-up for new versions. So that would be the reason for maybe doing the theme last. But that's a great question, Jim. Which order? Yeah, core, plugins, and then themes, or core and translations, and then plugins, then themes. Thanks very much for that, Jim. No more other questions coming through, and that's great. Thank you so much for joining me today. So next week on WP Quickies, I am going to be talking about will page builders replace web devs? So I've had a lot of conversations online lately about this. Within the different sectors that I'm in, I kind of help out with the Elementor Sydney meetup group. I also help in different Facebook groups, and this always kind of comes up every so often. People saying, you know, these page builders, are they going to replace web devs? Are they going to replace web designers for those? So we'll have a little bit of discussion next week. I hope you will interact with that and provide your views about that. And we'll just go through where page builders are, what the expectations are, and what the differences are between, you know, doing it yourself and hiring a professional web developer or designer. So thank you so much for today. Please join me next week and we'll talk about this page builders. Take care until then and see you next week. Ciao.